if you are sharing anything in the world, on any level, and you have any attachment to anything, you're sharing from your identity. If you have an attachment to people liking you, that's your identity. If you have an attachment to people listening to you or hearing you, that's your identity. If you are sharing with an outcome in mind, conscious or unconscious, you are sharing through your identity. When you give for the sake of giving, you're sharing from your soul. When you love for the sake of loving, you're loving from your soul. And some of you have been stuck in your respective careers or callings or service opportunities because you have knowingly or unknowingly had an attachment to an outcome, even if that outcome is not being rejected or not being judged or not being criticized. You have to have the courage to put yourself out into the world. It takes a lot of vulnerability. I know it can be scary. It takes a lot of vulnerability. Once you get used to putting yourself out into the world, it becomes easier and easier and easier. At first, it's hard because you have been led to believe that being yourself is the last thing that anybody wants. So, if you're struggling in your relationship or in your career vocation or in your finances or in a certain area of life and living, maybe it's because you're not being you and you're not doing it for the sake of doing it. So it's important that you put your heart into whatever it is that you're doing. You put your heart into whatever it is that you're doing. Because when you put your heart into it, it's just unconditional. It doesn't matter. You're doing it then because of how you feel, how you get to feel. This is a very important distinction. Also, if you are significance driven, then you attract people into your life who are all significance driven, right? Because you're only ever being with yourself. So if all of a sudden you're all about accomplishing and achieving and making things happen and da-da-da, well then naturally you're going to be around people who are that same way. But the problem is then it forms a prison around you and you become stuck in this prison. And then you can't get out of it because everyone around you is doing it and it reinforces it and it becomes a feedback loop. So I share this a lot and I think that the interpretation of the sharing has gotten lost in translation, as most things do where I'm concerned. But I've said to people, do what you feel like doing. You know, like do what you really feel like doing, right? Do what you really feel like doing, right? Do what you feel like doing. It's such a distinction. It's such an important distinction. Do what you feel like doing. How many situations have you been in where you've done something that you didn't feel like doing? You didn't enjoy it. The people that you were with didn't enjoy it. No greater benefit was derived for anybody because everybody was just going through the motions. But life is so much of that. It's like going through the motions because you're meant to be doing something, because you think you should be doing something. So for example, when I ended up on Oprah without a book, it blew people's minds. Because everybody thought that they had to write a book in order to get onto Oprah. So all of a sudden when I'm on there without a book or anything, like just me and my jolly long-haired self in a suit, people didn't know what to do with that. I wrote a book afterwards because she told me to, but I never had the agenda of writing a book. Never had an agenda. As it relates to everything that I've done, I've never had an agenda. Because I've known from the get-go that it's not about me. Not about who I am. It's just what's happening. Once you get this, wow, does life become beautiful and easier. And then vulnerability becomes a joy. Because you realize that actually through your vulnerability, you form a greater level of connection with everyone. Why? Because everybody wants to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to walk around pretending like they have everything figured out. Everybody wants to be vulnerable. You know what I love? I love this platform